There we go.
There we go.
Recording in progress. Apparently, this filter makes you look like an old person. Yo, welcome to F1 F Off, your audio pit stop for F1 news, interviews, and race reviews. I'm your host, Idris.
And I'm Gabe.
Apparently. So Gabe and I
watch this man fall flat on his face. How embarrassing.
And then it's like the lamest video of all time.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so real quick. So Gabe and I, we were talking a little bit about like social media and TikToks, clearly from the apparently voice we were using, right? So, you know how, you have a really good friend who shows you like a YouTube video or a TikTok or, oh, that's another thought that just popped in my head. Do you say TikTok video or do you just say TikTok? I feel like you're kind of showing your age if you say, I was looking at a TikTok video. You kind of like a boomer,
Yes, I think it's just a TikTok. Yeah, because whenever I hear somebody say it, they're just like, I saw this TikTok and it's this, and I'm like, yeah. No, so, I have, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, the reason I'm bringing that up is just because I think we've all experienced it where someone's showing you a video that they think is hilarious, and they're like, oh, wait for it. And then you watch it and you're like,
was that it?
And you're like, oh, yeah, that was cool.
You know what's funny? I don't get the I don't get the grimace shake humor one, where they're like talking about drinking the grimace shake and then they're like on the ground and it's spilled everywhere. I'm like, I don't understand what this is trying to say.
I don't get it either.
I don't understand. I've been trying to enforce Gen Z vernacular into my vocabulary as of recently, and so I've just been saying like everything is no cap bussin' for real, and like everything. And I even told like there's this kid that comes into my work and he's a Gen Zer, and I asked him like, where does bussin' come from? He's like, oh, it's a TikTok or something. And I'm like,
no.
Okay, I'm like, well, you know what? I'm going to use bussin' so much that I will single-handedly make it uncool for everyone.
These kids don't even know where that comes from. That is a hip hop culture term.
Is it?
That has been around.
Okay.
Yeah, bus it. Yeah, like
okay,
and here we are on a Formula One podcast talking about bussing.
Bus it. Well, I'll tell you one thing. What wasn't bussin', and that was the spot,
the procession,
the Belgian Grand Prix. Okay, we've talked about this. I will reiterate on my side personally. Not every race is a banger.
Sure.
Okay. And you got to find the moments in it that are great that, are there. Like you got to find those moments. There weren't a lot of those moments.
all that build up.
But there were maybe two, which we'll talk about. But this was also a sprint race weekend, and it was a rain weekend here and there. But it was. I did find it pretty entertaining that everyone was like, "Oh, well, it's gonna rain. It's gonna rain for 10 minutes straight.
It's gonna be water, man."
And everyone's like, "Oh, the inters are gonna come out," and then it just didn't rain.
Yeah,
and I'm just like, well, I don't know who the weather people are. Like, is it really that unpredictable? Like, come on.
So, two thoughts immediately come to mind. It's funny. I'm actually really glad this was a sprint race weekend because I thoroughly enjoyed the sprint race and the shootout. I thought they were better than the actual race event themselves.
Okay.
Just because there was a lot of because just the rain, right? The rain just completely impacted everything.
Yeah.
The second thing I wanted to say was really funny. So Sam Collins, he's like the tech media dude on F1 TV, right? And if you're watching an F1 TV app, you can see all of his stuff. But you know it's going to be a super slow race when you have someone talking about potential strategies that might happen if this certain thing happens. And you're like, oh boy, okay. Yeah. I hope there's rain, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, well, it's funny. I've been hearing a lot of people say things like, why don't we just like say Max won and just let him go home and I'm just like, because mathematically he has not won yet. This is very important. Like he mathematically has not won. Now here's the thing: the probability of him winning continues to go up, but mathematically he could DNF the rest of the season, and somebody else might be able to take the championship mathematically.
And it might be, it could be Checo But you know,
Right.
his championship dreams. He's now facing the music, as
Right.
Helmut Marko
Or-
let us know today.
Or, you know, there was a situation in what was it? Was it 2007? I think it was 2007 that the McLaren had that big
Yep.
controversy where they were selling data to Ferrari or whatever. They got basically removed from the constructors championship altogether for that. And I feel like
Ooh.
if there was if there is an egregious enough of a violation
Yeah.
from the team and the driver as far as like cheating or developing their car in certain ways, like it, you know, it's there's precedent for it. You know, it's not like
Yeah.
it's unheard of. Not that
Yeah.
I'm hoping for it to happen because I don't want to see people cheating, but
Yeah.
there's some of us out there are like, yes, I hope they're cheating.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think it would be inadvisable to
Yeah.
to go the cheating route, given like the ramifications of everything, right? Like you would
Right.
there's just so much shame and embarrassment in doing that, and then like now you have to go out in front of the media and sit there and just be like, oh well, it was catering, you know, like
yeah. Even though I'll talk about I have interesting data to talk about with their aero advantage, but
yes.
well, real
Let's
quick
do it.
before we get any further, I want to do let's do the track background.
Track background. We need like a little, like, I don't know, it could be just like a, you know, just like a little
Sure.
something, you know, I don't know.
Little beat behind it. Yeah, well, we can do something like that. But anyway, track background. So the name of the event is the Formula One MSC Cruises Belgian Grand Prix 2023. That is a mouthful if I've ever heard it. Our
MS
track. What are you gonna say?
I was gonna say MSC Cruises is hilarious to me because every single time MSC pops up on like they either sponsor a race or their ads pop up on the track, apparently Google search results for that just skyrocket because everyone's just like, what's MSC? And every time I see it, I think Michael Schumacher or Mick Schumacher.
That's what
you
I
know?
think of. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was, you know, it's funny, like the names that everybody has is like their little tags, right?
Yeah.
They're usually just the first three. It's the first
last
three
name.
like letters of their last name,
Mhm.
except for Michael and Ralph Schumacher, because Michael Schumacher was MSC
Yeah.
and Ralph was RSC.
Mm.
And so Mick, when Mick came back, he adopted the MSC again. Because I was always thinking about that for me, because there's a couple of racing games where you could determine what your like thing is.
Yeah.
And mine would be F. I think I did FCH or FSH, you know, instead of
Okay,
FIS, because that could
okay.
also be like Fisichella. But I mean, I guess it doesn't matter a whole lot. Like it's,
Yeah.
you know, but like, yeah, I just think like the fish in there would be kind of
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. It's also the looks too, right? Some
Yeah.
letters just look nice next to one another. You know?
They do. We have talked about what we did. Do we say what we still said what our racing number would be, right? Did we do that
Ooh.
in an episode?
I think so. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
so. I think I said like 20 for the birthday of my birth month, right? The day of the birth month, right? And then 64 for Nintendo 64. That's as
Right.
deep as it gets. You know?
Yeah. Well, mine is 92, and that's my birth year. So,
There you go.
but anyway, the track that they raced at this weekend was the Circuit des Spa-Francorchamps.
Socket de Sport Francorchamps.
Circuit des France. I'm not going to be able to pronounce this city. Stavelot?
I think it might be Stavlo. Potentially.
Well, maybe yeah. It maybe
Stavlo.
Is Stavlo.
It is
yeah,
Stavlo. Mhm.
Stavlo. In Belgium. The first race was held in 1925, and this was when the racetrack was. I mean, so this is the longest racetrack on the calendar,
Yes.
and it was way longer before
insane.
because they literally just drove out into the middle of the forest and just did a little loop-de-loo and came back. It was probably twice the distance that it is now.
Oh my God.
Because they were just way out into the Ardennes, which is dangerous because there's just trees everywhere and nothing to protect them, and they were just doing high speed in these little cars from the 60s. Like, it's just wild to think about. But yeah, this race is typically in the afternoon. It's one of those tracks that has a very, very high probability of rain, which which was funny because this is the first time that Spa has been held in July and not August.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently July is a drier month than August is for the racetrack. Which I'm like, I don't really know if it made that much of a difference, if we're being honest.
Well, remember 2 seasons ago, the Belgian Grand Prix didn't happen, right?
Right, yeah.
And Bernd Mailander was driver of the day.
Right, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I do remember that. Oh yeah, that that affected Max's championship win that year, right? Isn't that because
Yeah,
also
they got
happened in
half points.
Suzuka and they did the half point thing? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So for those of you that are unfamiliar, back in 2021, there was like hella rain during the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa-Francorchamps, and and so I believe if I remember the correct standings at how they classified it at the end, they had to red flag the entire race, and then they had safety car drive out. Bernd Mailander, he's the safety car driver, so that was kind of like the joke that he led so many laps, and but no way the FIA would actually give that man a trophy, but no way the FIA would actually ever let people vote for Bernd Mailander and put his face on the on the broadcast. Slightly embarrassing to them, I guess, but I don't know. I feel like if they lean into it, it'd be okay. But regardless, so safety cars leading. They have to drive like just a handful of laps around, and then they call the race, and they awarded half points, and that affected how people were classified as far as the rankings go. But it was a whole thing. People were mad because all those people spent all that money, like hundreds and hundreds of dollars or euros, I guess, on this race, and they didn't get to see a race. They saw like 2 laps and no refunds, nothing like that, from my understanding.
Well, and they saw those 2 laps because you have to conduct at least 2 racing laps in order for those half points to be awarded.
Right.
So, and those racing laps can be under safety car conditions too.
Yeah.
That we kind of saw a little bit of that with the sprint race, which
hot damn.
The sprint race had obviously had rain conditions going on. The shootout saw Lance Stroll on medium tires, like in the rain, just go off and hit the wall. And so they had to, take a while to kind of extract him. But yeah, there were a reduction in laps. I mean, it's a short enough of a race anyway. But they, I believe, conducted at least 2 racing laps under the safety car, and then they came around, and it was a rolling start from Max, which I'm sure, did it Max? Max was
on pole. Max ended up
okay.
Yeah, Max ended up I guess quote unquote winning that race.
Yeah. But yeah, which is fine for him because he didn't want to have to do a standing start in the rain, I'm sure. That guy just seems to get everything he wants. If we're being honest.
I mean, looks like his race engineer was trying to keep him in check though today.
Oh yeah, well,
we'll talk about that.
Well, yeah, well, and then also too, like, we should say, like, during the sprint race, Hamilton and Checo have a moment, which in raining conditions, right? Your car's sliding around. Lewis Hamilton was, I forget what turn it was, but Lewis, when you watch the aerial footage, Lewis was more than halfway past Perez. He was like literally wheel to wheel. And they came through a corner, and, the rain kind of washed Lewis a little bit wide. And he bumped into Perez, and they, kept going. And I mean, right off the gate, Martin Brundle was like, this is a racing incident. And for me, I looked at it, I'm like, yeah, like that looks like a racing incident to me.
Yeah.
And yet they gave Hamilton a 5-second penalty, and to make things worse, they gave him 2 points on his racing license.
Yeah, that's just
like,
insult to
are
injury.
you kidding me?
Yeah.
Lance Stroll at freaking the British Grand Prix, like, drove off the track and then, like, straight out of the side of the track and, like, just ran into who was it, Gasly or something? Like, he ran straight into somebody. And like, I don't think he got 2 points on his license for that. Like they would have said, I would have seen the news for. I mean, who knows? But I don't think it's true. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Like they were coming for our boy Hamilton really hardcore at this race, man.
I don't
Really
know.
hardcore.
I don't know what that was about. And what I don't like, I think my least favorite thing about all that entire scenario was then Checo was talking like in interviews and stuff as if Lewis like ruined his race and everything, when like just looking at the performance of Checo during the sprint race, you're just like, dude, what are you talking about?
Well, he did start falling back through, and I was immediately reminded of Ricky Bobby, and I made that reel where it's just like, what are those things? Are those the other cars? No. Like I was just like, yep, that's exactly what happened. He just fell through the field.
It's absurd.
Yeah, I don't know, that just, it just felt like such an overstep for me. I was just like, FIA, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why do you have to put out such a harsh penalty for something that was not maliciously deliberate? Like it like 2 points on his racing. Like, are you kidding me?
And this goes back to our discussion about like penalties. There needs to be some intermediate penalty between no penalty and the 5-second penalty.
Right.
I think sometimes the 5-second penalty is just way too harsh, right?
Yeah.
Like remember when Sainz caused that ridiculous pile up? I forget, it was this season. But I forget the ground. Wait, was it this season or last season? I forget. But he caused a huge pile up at some race, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's sitting there, and they red flag the race, right? And all the drivers and cars are getting repaired, or drivers are taking their time getting out of the car, that kind of stuff. And Sainz is just like, no, let me talk to them after the race.
Please,
wait.
Discuss with me.
Yeah. And on one hand, yeah, it sucks because he did cause the incident, right? But 5 seconds, just at that point with the following distance and everything, you're effectively out of the points. You might even be P14, P15. You know?
I think
so it was just terrible.
I think they need to have I think 5 should not be the minimum.
Right. I think
1 or 2 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a 2-second penalty. Right. That might be enough for you to that might be enough. Imagine this. That might be enough that if somebody is following behind you that's 4 seconds down, they might be able to make up 2 seconds on you in order to pass. Like, it's still a penalty. It's not guaranteed that you're going to fall down the order, but it's might be enough that it kind of gives you, but especially for like a racing incident like that, like, maybe they should just do a warning before they dish out a time penalty. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, unless it's so deliberate, unless it's like clearly you didn't give back the place, you clearly re-entered the track in an unsafe manner, something like that. I could imagine the penalty being applied. But it's just like, oh man, like, and also I don't necessarily like that the time penalties are served in the pit lane all the time.
Oh yeah, it's way more destructive to one's race that way.
Yeah,
and it just destroys your race.
And there's also, as we saw, didn't we see with the Ferrari too, that like if you try and serve that 5-second penalty, if one of the mechanics touches the car accidentally or just slightly too early, then you get a 10-second penalty. Yeah, and it's like not your fault. You're just sitting in the car. Like, that doesn't seem fair. You know what I mean? So I don't think that they should be allowed to serve those penalties in the pit lane. I think those should just automatically be applied at the end of the race.
Yeah. I think I'm inclined to agree with you. It's just, it's easier. But man, just watching someone have to sit in the pit lane, like before you can even touch the car, right?
Yeah.
Alpine, they just messed up a while back when.
Oh yeah, it was Ocon. That's right. Yeah.
That was awful. Like, they clearly, breached the do not touch the car rules, right? Did they do it twice? Was it no, just the one time, and that initiated the whole thing.
He had a penalty, right? And then he came in and they touched the car, so that he got another 5-second or he got a 10-second penalty. Then I think he was speeding in the pit lane or something, and they got him another penalty for that. Like, it was just,
and it was when he was coming in to serve that original penalty. Yes. So it was a total of 30 seconds, right?
Yeah, it was wild.
Or something insane like that.
Yeah. Really, really insane. Yeah. But we'll talk more about Alpine later. I would like to hear you talk about some of the real positive stuff that we saw during that sprint race,
Oh,
specifically
absolutely.
from our increasingly new favorite boy, Oscar
Man,
Piastri.
that's my
Never
boy.
thought I'd say it.
I know. I know. Like he is just so composed and
Hmm.
so calm, cool, and collected under pressure. I don't think we've seen someone drive like that, like a rookie drive like that, since what, probably like Lando back in like 2018 ish.
Yeah, Lando had some confidence for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah. Yeah, I'm very impressed with Piastri.
very.
And it makes me happy to know that these rookie drivers are not necessarily it's not necessarily them, it's the car that they're driving. And the minute they
Hmm.
get something quick, like they
Yep,
can make it work, which
they're
is
not scrubs.
all yeah, right. Which is all the more reason why like I'm watching like Lance Stroll struggling to like fend off Albon, and I'm like, are you kidding me, dude? Like
Yeah,
seriously. Um but
yeah.
anyway, yeah.
We'll talk more about Aston because there are a lot of questions and thoughts that I
Mhm,
have that I will
yeah.
reveal.
Yes. But yeah, Piastri really strong performance out the gate. You know what happened inevitably happened. We were expecting. It's Alonso goes off, pulls out a safety car. Really disappointing because it's like Piastri had a nice little gap, and he probably could
Yeah.
have led for quite a while. You're at a disadvantage when you're behind somebody's spray.
Hmm.
Even if you're really, really good, person like Max, it slows you down. You can't
Of course.
just pass because you got clear track. But the safety car slowed everybody up, and I think they said that Oscar Piastri took off a little too soon. I think they were saying they should have waited for him. He should have waited until the like start finish straight to start actually take off. Yeah, I think he was just trying his best to psych things out. Now he's never been
Mm,
in that position before, I don't think, unless he did
yeah.
in, like F3 or whatever, or F2. Um, but yeah, no, very strong showing for him. Lando had a bit of a rough weekend,
Yeah.
but I still think that Lando is. I think he is world championship material. I think
Oh
he
yeah.
for sure is.
Yeah.
He has a good temperament. He's got a good attitude. He's a quick driver.
Yeah.
And he plays fair on track. I haven't seen him do
Yeah.
anything dirty. He's a very clean racer. And these are all good things, you know.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we're kind of wrapping up our thoughts on the qualifying and sprint, I think now is probably a good time to talk about Aston Martin. I just don't know where they've disappeared to the last
Mhm.
several race weekends. It's interesting because I think the results that we've seen in the season thus far
Mhm.
indicate that there was a lot of like technical and engineering momentum behind the car and the team
Yeah.
up until, we started seeing some good results, right? And then what we're seeing over the last few race weekends, I think, is kind of an example of what happens if you aren't maybe adapting
Yeah.
to the changing conditions, right? Changing conditions so far as bringing upgrade packages, understanding how the car is actually performing, that sort of thing, right? Because in the time that Aston Martin was effectively the second team,
Mm.
we've seen McLaren, who circled their entire car in their upgrade doc. I'll never forget. Like, it is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Just that
Mhm.
every team will submit to the FIA all of the, like, a package of drawings and updates that they're providing to their car for the upcoming race weekend, right? And there was one race weekend in particular. Everyone had some changes, like rear wing, front wing, changing the brake ducts, that kind of thing. McLaren just had their entire car circled, and
Mhm.
like so funny. They're just
Mhm.
like, all this gonna change.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking, and here's something that I can ask you because I was just thinking about this. What are your thoughts about the nature of the cars changing in this way across the season? Because this isn't something that you see in spec racing series
Mm-hmm.
like IndyCar or Formula E. You don't see the cars changing. You don't see them putting on new aero parts unless it's like a universal thing, like they're testing some,
Right.
Um, and also on the subject of Aston specifically in regards to this, Fernando Alonso was claiming he believes that Pirelli's introduction of these new tire compounds halfway through the season affected them negatively. Um,
Mm.
I think he believes the car does not perform as well on these new tires as they did on
That's
the old
possible.
ones.
Yeah.
And honestly, if I'm going to be honest with you, I don't understand why Pirelli did that. Can't you wait till next year? You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like, why, unless it's a safety concern, like that happened in 2012. In 2012 at the British Grand Prix, they had like, I think 7 or 8 cars just have blowouts on the track because there's some sort of
Yikes.
structural problem with the tires internally that they were just blowing up. Like it was just boom, boom, like it was crazy.
They
And
were just
so
bussing.
it was busting. They had to change like within a couple of races. They had to bring out new construction for the tire compounds to address the safety problem. That I understand. I don't know why Pirelli decided that they were going to change the compound of the tires and just throw that in the middle of the season.
Hmm.
Like for me, I just wait till the end of the season. Like I think that part of the problem that we have is that things change so often and so frequently. It's like they're trying to force the change of like who's up front and whatever.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying that because Formula One has like a because it is an ever changing prototype. I don't think that you should get rid of I don't think you should get rid of cars being able to upgrade or get new packages come in. I just think it should be limited. I think you should have one big series of upgrade packages that you bring like to the one half partway through the season.
Hmm.
And then you just go with that one for the rest. I mean, what do you think?
I actually like that there's constant change from weekend to weekend, and that the teams are just bringing upgrade packages all the time. I think what needs to be potentially curtailed is how much or how many upgrades teams can bring, right? Maybe some teams have blown through. Maybe before I speak on this, this is me gonna sounding kind of, I don't know. I'm just talking. I'm just a dude in my office chair, just talking about Formula One, and I have not sat down to read like the regs about this.
Yeah.
But I would assume that some teams are probably using or burning through more of their dollars on upgrade packages versus other teams, right? If that's the case, maybe that's something that can be identified as the pain point for all the teams, right? And if you say, okay, you are allowed maybe 3 or 4 injection points of new technology per year, I guess maybe you get kind of like the balance there as opposed to just upgrades all the time. But on the flip side too, you may really honestly need to change your car setup from weekend to weekend. Think about your rear wing, right? If you are on a racing on a course that is like a power course, right? Kind of like Canada, where you have like lots of straights, your rear wing is going to look a little different than a course like Brazil, right? Because that's like very windy, tight turns going up and down, that sort of thing, right? So you should be able to change those kinds of things for sure. But also you should be able to develop and try out and test out new technologies. And I think maybe that's what Pirelli's trying to do with introducing these new tire compounds at this part of the season. Maybe it would have been better if they'd waited until after the summer break. Who knows? But what they're trying to do, I'm assuming, is gather data on just how these tire compounds perform and if it's worthwhile to bring them back, right? Because maybe they collected data this weekend and they're like, oh, no, this is not working. This is not what we expected at all. And they just go back to it, right? Because as tire manufacturers, they also have that push to develop their products, right? And also, I think contractually they are hooked up to F1 to deliver a certain compound or a certain performance level when their tires are concerned. So that's what I think.
I think it's just I feel like there has to be some level of consistency for the cars to sort of cling to, and I feel like if you have a tire compound, you know what that's going to be across the season. Like you have the data is shared, and it's presented in such a way. It's just like it just feels like a thrown in a curveball. Like it's almost like
and I get that.
Or like people have this idea, and I know that like thematically this feels like it'd be an interesting thing, but I don't. I think that there's potential for safety concerns, and that's the idea of making artificial rain on a track, because we're already having trouble with this. Like people are, rain mixes things up, but it's not necessarily something that you should want to see. You know what I mean?
Sure.
The only way I could imagine is if they did it as like on a track that they know is going to be a sunny weekend, and whatever rain they disperse is what's there, and then it just as it washes off, like
That's it. It's gone.
That's it. It's gone.
Yeah.
But also that's kind of hard. I think it would be a little wasteful at this point, just spraying water out onto the track in this way. I'm not too convinced that it would really produce the kind of racing that people are wanting to, because of how unpredictable that it is,
Yeah.
So
Plus, Seb would not be happy about that.
no. Max wouldn't either. I'm sure. Which, yeah, well, let's move on to the race then.
Takes us right into that, yeah.
Let's take it right into that.
So opening lap got crazy.
Yeah.
It was actually surprisingly pretty clean and tight. Checo with the statement overtake over Leclerc, getting right into P1, into turn 1, which is excellent to see. But then you get Piastri and Sainz with damage right off jump, and that was really frustrating to see because like I had a feeling the second that happened, I was like, we're not going to see Piastri finish this race. And a few moments later, yeah, definitely.
Do you think Carlos was not at fault for that in any way?
I'm trying to think back on it. I don't know. I don't think it was. It kind of felt like an incident to me, if I'm remembering correctly.
I think that they were suggesting that because he locked up, he was worried about running into the side of Lewis Hamilton, so he cut deeper into the corner.
Okay. Now, okay, it's literally replaying in my mind right now.
Yeah.
Yes. No. Sainz was fine. He had. Yeah. He had no room there. He gave Piastri as much room as possible there. I think that might have been a little bit of an error from Piastri.
It's tough to say. I mean, because you're in those situations, because from what I saw, by the time Carlos had cut off that corner, Piastri had nowhere else he was going to go. And I think it was just inevitable that he was going to get squeezed. And so I think that's that's the problem. I think is that there's you have issues with drivers not being able to see each other. There's always that argument of whose corner is it, with as far as alongside, that's why the thing with Hamilton really frustrated me in the sprint, because he had every right to be where he was, and he just washed wide because it was raining. Yeah. So like that shouldn't have been a huge thing.
I guess my only pushback to that is the Piastri Sainz incident is very reminiscent of what Max used to do all the time to people on the inside line being behind, right? And that's why there was that rule clarification about how far up you need to be, your front axles need to be considered, for you to
contesting
own
the corner.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I'm like, I don't know. I think Piastri was like, I hear you on that, but I think just based off of things we've seen in the last several years, because that was a huge point of contention between Hamilton. Oh my God, Hamilton,
Hamilton,
Hamilton and Verstappen back in the 2021 season, right?
Yeah.
And the FIA said, okay, no more of this. This is what the rule is. So, I think that's something to definitely be considered here.
Yeah.
But just, either way, big bum that Piastri retired. And, just after this race weekend that he's had, like phenomenal weekend, he really deserves like a good haul of points. And sure, he got the sprint race haul, but that wasn't reflected in the actual full race. So
yeah,
bit of a bummer.
I'm excited to see his performances going forward. I mean,
absolutely,
I'd love to see McLaren scrapping it up out there, at least as much as they can. So
he had his Vegemite today, and his Fosters.
Vegemite win this one. Well, speaking of really solid performances, once again, our boy Albon really, really, really doing a stellar job putting that Williams in places that people don't think it's going to be. And I'm going to say, out of all the teams that could potentially have a resurgence in Williams is the one I'm looking forward to the most, because Williams has such a strong history of world championship drivers and world championship wins.
Yeah.
That it seems you get new fans coming into it, and they've only ever known Williams as being down in the bottom. Like they've never experienced Williams being at the top or anywhere near the top. And like I mean, it's possible they can do it. And Albon
absolutely.
is doing a stellar job with that car. He's just like he's putting out performances that remind me a lot of Alonso, where it's just like he's in a car that nobody expects is going to do well, and he's putting in
Yeah.
race finishes that are doing well.
I mean, I think what helps is that the Williams has monstrous straight line speed, even
Mm-hmm.
over some of the top teams, right?
Oh yeah,
Like
oh
that's
yeah.
scary.
Mm-hmm.
That is, I mean, there's something about their car, like design philosophy, that works for the straight line speed.
Mm-hmm.
Now the cornering and handling through turns, that's maybe that's something
Right.
that needs to be improved. I mean, definitely it's something that needs to be improved. But I'm with you. James Valls is the new TP over at Williams. He is coming from Mercedes,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they have a really really good, bright future with him at the
Mm-hmm.
top. And he seems empathetic, like he cares about his people.
Yeah.
I just listened to his drive Beyond the Grid interview with Tom Clarkson, and really 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 good interview. And he seems
Mm-hmm.
to have a really good logical head on his shoulders, and
Yeah.
like I said, he cares about his people, which is really crucial, because sometimes a lot of times you'll get leaders who it's kind of a cult of personality. It's just about them, right?
Yeah.
And this is the kind of person with that personality who can eke the best out of people just because he cares, and he's there and he's listening. So
Right.
shout out to Williams and shout out to Albon. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I think the car has not looked better, and I think Albon is really comfortable in that machine, and I think that he, I hope to see him at least on the podium this year. That would be amazing. It's a tall order, but you never know. There could be some big. We haven't really seen a huge incident this year yet. Like we haven't seen like a big pileup of cars, which is a good thing. But it's also like those are usually where the shake 'em ups happen. We haven't really seen anything like that yet. So who knows? Maybe we'll get it once the summer break happens. Everybody returns. But yeah. Well, continuing on throughout the race, Norris did not have that great of a race. If we're being honest, he was just getting gobbled up out there, which is a bummer because like I really want to see. If you feel like the McLaren hasn't really gotten a chance to stretch its legs all that much, like you get a little glimpse of it, Silverstone and Hungary, but then this one, Piastri probably would have been up there scrapping with everybody pretty well, but yeah, unfortunately his race went down and Norris was really nowhere to be found. So
yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, it sucks. We're really not seeing the best of that car. I don't know what happened this weekend with Norris. Like, was there something off with, like, did he crash in a free practice and then messed up his chassis? He did. Norris.
He did have an off. He went flying. I think he went flying into the gravel. And that may have given him some floor damage that he couldn't he couldn't have repaired. So that's potentially an issue. But who knows? I mean, they got the summer break. We'll see what happens. Hopefully some teams will gain some confidence and bring some good shit back to the track and really really be able to kind of move themselves up the order. We want more people up on the podium. I'm tired of just seeing Red Bull and then a random, Ferrari or whatever.
Hey, that's what happened today.
It is what happened today. And, maybe I shouldn't say random Ferrari. It's been Hamilton, Norris a couple of times. Alonso, a bunch of times.
Yeah.
But anyway,
and honestly, the last few races has been everyone but Checo. So
right. Well, that's the thing. Yeah, let's talk about Red Bull. Because Max had a 5 grid spot penalty at the beginning of the race, and so Checo was leading a huge chunk of it in the beginning.
I think the first 8 laps. Actually no. Checo was leading until maybe like lap 27 or
27.
So.
Yeah, so it's more than half the race.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, once Max came to pass Checo.
Oh yeah,
it's like, I mean, I thought they were supposed to be equal machinery. Like,
Dude.
You know what I mean? It's just
Man.
like either it's not equal machinery and they're telling you it's equal machinery, because it's Red Bull and they love to lie.
You think they're giving Checo like the spare parts from like 3 years ago?
How is he gonna know? He's not driving Max's car. You know what I'm saying? like I know there's people out there like, oh, well, like, don't be that way. It's like, dude, Formula One, man, these guys, they don't care. They will lie and do whatever they want in order to, mess with people. Like this is what they do. Like, it's possible. It's not impossible. So who knows? I mean, unless Checo gets in his car and is like, "What is this boost button?" And then it's like, it's like hidden in the car somewhere. It just says, "Go Max, go."
Yeah, and then his transmission just falls out from underneath his car.
They just have like some bottle of nitrous oxide hidden in the Red Bull somewhere that activates when the DRS is opened or something. It just says "Go Max, go" on the button. Who knows? But I was just shocked to see that Checo couldn't even put up a fight.
Dude.
And then immediately Max
over.
just took off like Perez was not enough, which is another driver. And I'm like, you can't. Come on. I know Max
wild.
is fast, but like, is he
that
really
fast?
that fast?
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't.
Dude.
I'm not sure, honestly.
It just, But with just Max's performance, though, it really goes to show that he is really in tune with that car. He drives that car like it's an extension of his body,
right?
And I think this further cements the fact that Checo has been struggling with this car. Like he can't find, he hasn't been able to find that balance like he had earlier in the season, right? And maybe that's due to, the upgrade packages that Red Bull's introduced, right? So not all upgrade packages are equal, right?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel bad, man. This is how it happens at Red Bull, right? Like Max, like lead driver in this instance, Max. Well, I should say primary, right? Like he's ahead in the championship, all that whatnot. Just is like firing on all cylinders and is just in sync with the car, right? But then the other driver they can't eke it out, right? We saw this happen with Albon. We saw this happen with Gasly. I guess even maybe Ricardo to a certain extent before he left and punched out to go to Renault.
Yeah, well, what's funny is that people made this claim for Sebastian Vettel as well.
Oh, and Weber.
Yeah, but when Danny Ricciardo came in to Red Bull with Vettel, like Danny was winning races. And so like he was able to adapt to the car well enough as well, right? To get his race wins. So I think it's tough to say. I do agree. I do think that the car is tuned more to fit Max's driving style. I think because I think that's what Red Bull does. They invest all of their development and all of their resources into catering the guy that's like their dude. And I don't necessarily know if every team does that. I don't necessarily believe that Mercedes did that, because I think that Rosberg and Hamilton were pretty much unequal machinery for the most part. Mercedes, just the German mentality of just being like, this car is superior to all other cars, but this is just a duplicate down to the smallest microscopic measurement. Like, it just feels like I never remember hearing like, oh, like he has a better car than me and he's given him, false parts. Like they definitely claimed that. I definitely think that Jos Verstappen, I remember in like 2021 or 2020 was like claiming that like Max was getting inferior parts or something, and like it was this whole. I was like, come on, are you kidding? There's a lot of messiness. It's hard to know for sure unless like the FIA does some investigation to really find out. But anyway, well, speaking of Max though, what was going on with him and his his race engineer just arguing? Like, I mean, damn, like what?
See, I think this is the thing with Max. He seems to be like a snarky, sarcastic director, and I don't mean snarky in like in a negative way at all. But he can just dish it out. He can give it back, right? And I think his race engineer, GP Jean-Pierre Lambias, I believe is his name. He's the same way too, right? And I think they probably get on along pretty well because of that. But I think what's happening is Max gets this. He probably goes into like sim racer mode, right? Where he's like, oh, I can eke more performance out. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this next thing, right? And he's making all these decisions, and he has all these thoughts independent of GP.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not giving his race engineer information, and then the race information that he's giving to Max is not being like acknowledged or adhered to, right? So then that probably creates a little bit of a frustration where he's like, look, I need you to focus. I know you're out here. You've got 10 seconds over Checo, but you need to think about potential of tire failure, or we need to make an extra pit stop or something. Do not kill those tires. And that's what a lot of the argument, well, not even really argument, it was more like one-sided, right? He just kept checking them every time. GP, that is, kept checking Max. So it was good to see. You know, I think that's what you want to see out of the race engineer, right? Because as a race engineer, you're not just managing information flow, like technical information flow about the car, about the track, weather conditions, that sort of thing, what your rivals are doing behind you, in front of you, but you're also managing like personalities here too, right? And it helps if you have that good rapport, that relationship with the driver. And so I think because of that, you could kind of hear Max later on kind of like say, I forget what it was exactly, where he was trying to make recommendations as to what he could do to help out, right? Because he probably realized he was in the wrong, right? And he's like, well, you know, this is for the team, so I want to make sure I'm not in sim racer mode too much, right? That's how I read the situation. What do you think?
Well, speaking of Max being in sim racer mode, he has been making comments recently that I'm not gonna lie have really gotten under my skin a bit. He said in an interview recently that he said I like solo racing, and that he prefers not to race with other drivers because like it's just, you know, more. And I'm just like, oh, God, dude, come on. It rubs me the wrong way, because it's like, well, if you don't, then go to another, like, do hill climb events. Like, do hill climb events, do rally racing. Those are all about racing solo and just being the fastest that you can be. This is a competitive motorsport. And it also just goes to tell me, it's like, well, dude, what are you going to do when people start challenging you, man? Are you going to lose your cool? Is it going to be like, oh, well, this isn't fair, I don't like this anymore? It's like, well, tough shit, man. Like, this is what it is. It just felt like such an arrogant thing to say in his position. You know what I mean? It's like, because he can make these statements. Like, I don't remember Hamilton ever saying like, oh, I'm bored in the car. We're just, he's just like, dude, yeah, we're winning. Awesome. This is great. Like, Max is just like, I just like to race by myself and I don't like to race with anyone else. And, he talked about how like the pack at the beginning, like the first lap, going into that corner, he's like, yeah, I like avoided the pack because, it's not my style. I don't like to be around other drivers. So, and I was like,
you sound like Mr. Kostick. I guess, like,
oh,
from this point,
doing?
I was gonna say,
I don't like to be
forward,
around the cars. No, it's not fair for me. Why does he get to race ahead of everyone else and we all have to be stuck in the back? It's not fair, Arnold. It's not fair. His car is so much faster. He gets penalized for aero, but then his car is so much faster on the straight. Are you keeping the money?
I mean, why you're not doing voice acting, man? Like, just forget working at the store, man. Like, just send your resume to Nickelodeon.
Well, maybe somebody will hear it and they'll offer me a job. And I'll sure. Are you keeping the money? I think it's just because when I was a kid, I didn't have a whole lot of friends, so I had to make my own friends in my head with my voices, and I think maybe that's what happened.
Wow.
Drama.
This is the supervillain origin story, y'all.
Welcome to F1 or F off therapy sessions.
Apparently, if you
this guy totally loses his cool. Wow, so bad. This Karen thought that she could get a discount if she yelled loud enough.
You go, Karen.
You go, Karen.
I hear Max's comment there, and I don't know. I think initially I hear that, and I'm like, oh, he must mean like sim racing mode, just like being able to try out new techniques and whatever it is. But yeah, I mean, the way you're describing it, it definitely sounds like it, or it's leaning more towards I just want to be able to be out in front and not get caught up with the back markers, you know?
Yeah, and at that point, it's like, why are you racing in a competitive racing series? You know what I mean? It's like, just do time trials somewhere. You know, if that's what you care about. You know, it's just it was just really it was just frustrating that somebody could make a statement like that in that position. Like, you know, like imagine. Okay, let me say this: if Nick DeVries said that throughout the season, he's like, you know, I just don't like to race around anybody. You know, I just like to do my own solo racing. You'd be like, well, dude, he should get fired. Like, get out. Like, because somebody else wants to be here and be competitive. But because Max is out front and he does that anyway. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, it's just Max being Max. Oh. I just can't with him.
Well, you know, Max is younger. You know, he is 25, so I think being able to pick his words properly too will probably improve over time. You know, so I would cut him some slack on that aspect.
I hope so. I mean, I don't want to hate Max, and I just at this point I just strongly dislike him. You know, if we move up to just a dislike, you know, I'll let you know. But yeah, well, and one other thing too that's a little frustrating that I noticed, especially speaking of Max and his fans, why is it that the FIA is just so quick to, well, I guess maybe it's not their fault. I just couldn't help but notice that like fans in the stands once again had those giant orange flares. Like nobody is finding them, nobody is banning them like they're supposed to be banning them. Guarantee you they're going to be all over Zandvoort. And it's just
absolutely.
They're supposed to be banned. They're supposed to not be using them, but they still keep getting away with it. And I'm like, I know it's not Max's fault, but like, oh, come on, guys.
You know,
like,
I find it really annoying now, but I think give it 10 years, and I'll probably watch a race from this era and be like, oh yeah, they used to do that with Max. Like that's so, like that was kind of cool, you know, like breaking the rules for their drivers. So I'm sure I'll probably switch my tune on it, but sometimes it's definitely just a nuisance, like just popping off, and at least wait until the race is like over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when there's other drivers who are still, running their race, like that's I don't know, that feels a little slightly disrespectful.
Once we've reached our 10th season of F1 or F off, we'll go back to season 1 and we'll be like, have our thoughts about Max Verstappen changed? You know, we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, after that, the race was pretty much said and done, right?
Yeah, pretty much said and done. It was just, there was a little that I did think it was hilarious that everyone's just like, oh, it's going to rain, you guys. It's going to rain. And then it just did not rain. It's just, you know.
Yep. Just like if Coach had put me in at States, we would have won. You know?
Right. Right.
Always.
Everyone's like sticking their hand out. They're like, oh, it's raining in the pit lane. It's like clearly nobody cares because nobody went on inters. I was expecting somebody to go on inters and then like the rain to just fall down, and then all of a sudden they're just like, hey, you guys.
And hopefully Albon, you know.
Yeah, but like it just didn't happen. So,
and unfortunately, we didn't get to hear George Russell's thought about the rain this race. That seems to be a focal point. anytime there's like slight rain, you know, they're like, oh, what's Russell saying? You know,
I've got rain on my visor. It's like, George, it's blue overcast sky. Like, there's not a rain. It's your sweat again.
He's like, blimey.
Yeah. Well. So overall, what were your takeaways from the Belgian Grand Prix?
It was cool. It was a cool race. Well, I should say the race weekend was pretty cool.
Yes.
The race itself, it was good up until about. I shouldn't say it was good up until, and then that insinuates that it was bad afterwards. You know, it was pretty processional, I would say, after Max passed Checo on lap 27. There were still some interesting things going on, lots of really good overtaking in the rear. Mm-hmm. It was really fun I shouldn't say fun. It was interesting to watch how poorly the McLaren of Norris was performing, and just to see him just get like Hadoukened all over the track. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
That was ridiculous. I felt so bad for him, especially after the last few race weekends. He's just been performing so well.
Yeah.
I think one team, real quick, that we absolutely need to talk about is Alpine.
Yes.
And this is a new segment I'd like to introduce, and it's called Allons-y, Alpine.
What does Allons-y actually
Le-
stand for?
Let's go.
Let's go,
Yeah.
Alpine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we, I need to figure out what's the French for "let's not go, Alpine," because that's more
Probably.
accurate as to what's going on here.
So probably nous allons pas.
Yeah. Well, just as a side note, I was trying to look up if there were any angry Alpine radio messages that I could use for a little transition music. There isn't any.
You know what you should just use? Just use the "but I am tired."
But I am retired. No, I mean, I'll see what I can do. I'll see.
Yeah.
What I can do.
Did you listen to the music that I picked
Yes,
there?
and the music is perfect. But I was just trying to. I think I found one thing where they were yelling at Ocon to let not fight with Fernando Alonso on track. But like I couldn't find any other like angry audio from Alpine for anything to use for that. Like Ferrari, it is so easy. There's
not even one of like Ocon yelling or something like that.
No, not that I could find. I couldn't find anything.
What about
This is
Alan
kinda
Prost
depressing.
getting upset about something?
I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
But I guess like for me, it just feels like it would be the Alpine drivers, that I would try and find.
Okay.
Who knows?
Yeah, we can figure that out.
But anyway, yeah, let's talk about Alpine because
I mean, we can also rename it. Hold on, let me. I can also reintroduce the segment real quick as we're recording. If you want to say "let's not go."
Well, I was gonna say like you're gonna put it in the video here too. The video's going up on you unedited.
I mean, I can edit it. So
raw footage. Yeah.
You guys are hearing everything. Okay, all right. So Alpine, we got to talk. I feel like there's so much potential, and I posted about this on our Instagram page the other day. Alpine to me feels like a big team with like the the execution of a backmarker team, They might have the funds of a big team, but they sure don't act like it, and it's really frustrating to me. Let's just talk about like their team culture and direction. Oh, actually, no. Let's list their mistakes and we'll talk about their culture and direction.
Well, first we should talk about the big thing though. First,
It's part of it. This is part of it. So the big mistake with Alpine was they changed their name to Alpine from Renault a few years ago. Why would you I know it's supposed to harken back.
You think that's the thing?
It's just a slight like annoyance I have. Everyone knows Renault. I hear Renault. I'm like, oh, Renault. Good. Great. Second mistake. Or go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, what if Mercedes just changed their name to AMG and got rid of all the Mercedes badges? Would you be equally upset?
No, I wouldn't. It's just that I don't like the name. Anyways, Gabe.
Well, it is funny hearing people say Alpine.
Yeah, that's the other thing, right? And they don't correct anyone on the pronunciation, right?
Yeah.
But then you also don't. Yeah, I'll tell you that one later. Second mistake was splitting with Alan Prost, right? So Alan Prost, for those that are uninitiated, is I think 4-time world champion, right? Raced in the late. Actually, no, he raced like I think even early 80s.
It was in the
early 80s through like the mid 90s.
Yeah, I think he made his debut in it may have even been like 79.
Like late, yeah,
and then he was doing a lot. He basically was at the beginning of the turbo era in the 80s. He drove the first Renault turbo car. For Renault. And then he switched to McLaren and had a lot more success in the McLaren organization into the early 90s before he ended up retiring. He also ran a F1 team briefly, I think in the late 90s and the early like Prost F1. But it just like Jackie Stewart's F1 team, it just just tanked.
There's only so much they can do, right?
Yeah.
But the issue with splitting with Alan Prost is that you have someone in him who knows what it takes to win, knows what needs to happen for the car to be good, for what kind of drivers to select, how the team culture and organization should function, right? And I think a couple years back, there was a very nasty breakup between Alpine, I think it was still Renault at the time, and Prost, and they didn't bring him back as an advisor, which I think is a huge mistake, right? If you have the opportunity to have an F1 legend on your team as an advisor, why would you not do that, right? Mercedes had Niki Lauda. Helmut Marko is there with Red Bull because he did race back in the day.
Le Mans racing, yeah.
Yeah. But he's a race car driver, right? Like he's someone who knows what it takes, right? Like hate him or love him, that's what it is, right? And then you have Alain Prost with Renault, and they let him go. And I just and from what it sounds like there was a big blow up about the team's like culture and direction and like what are we trying to do, you know? So that was another sign of just like some cultural institutional issues that they're facing.
Sure.
The third issue was letting Alonso go, right? How do you, and we all saw Drive to Survive the last season, how do you let Fernando Alonso go, right? It's the exact same thing with Alain Prost. You have someone who is a world champion, 2-time world champion in Fernando Alonso. You don't sign him automatically and just pay him the money that he's worth and is asking for, right? Just do it. Get it done. He's going to help elevate your team to a level that it would not have been at without him, right?
Yeah.
Next mistake, number 4, dropping the ball on Piastri. This is someone who is going to be the future Fernando Alonso, right? As far as like the talent caliber, right? Alain Prost, from all the prospects, all of his racing and highlights that we've seen over his F3, F2 career, right? And junior feeder series career. Yeah. This guy is going to be, he's a future world champion, right? We've seen glimpses of that this weekend, right? Yeah. They just dropped the ball on him.
Yeah.
And then number 5, we hear this race weekend that Otmar Safnauer, team principal, is getting the boot. Yep. And he's going to be gone by the end of this week, right?
Le boot.
And le boot. The thing about Otmar Safnauer is that, he's kind of a company man, right? Like he'll tout the company line, all that kind of stuff. But he kind of gets results, right? Like you look at his stint at Force India, right? And at Racing Point, and he took like a mid-level team, right? And he was knocking at the door of like 4th and 3rd places in the constructors championships, right? At the end of those seasons. That's really good, right? That is someone who can get results, right? Just give him some time. He's only been with Alpine like a couple of years. Like just like drivers, you got to give them some time to develop, right?
Yeah.
And it's all of these things that together, when I sat down to think to really just ponder upon, I was like, they have some massive cultural issues at Alpine, and I do not think it's going to be fixed unless there's some heads that roll, figuratively speaking, right? Ferrari, it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I think that's what they were trying. I think that's why they fired Otmar. Otmar, because I think they feel like they needed to clean house, even though like I don't think you needed to clean house. Like, and people, what's funny? I hear people, like you were just about to say, I hear people talk about this with Ferrari. Do you know how many times Ferrari has cleaned house to try and get a fresh start after like 2 years? Like, there comes a point where you have to take the time to invest in the team. Otmar Safnauer said himself that they had a 100 race plan to get Alpine back on top, and apparently the CEOs wanted it to be faster. They didn't want to wait. And like you look at, it took 5 years for Red Bull to turn Jaguar into a successful racing organization. It took Mercedes 5 years to go from, riding off the coattails of Braun GP and turn that into a successful racing organization. Like it took, it takes time. These are not things that happen overnight. And just like Helmut Marko, I feel like this idea of just like purging halfway through a season because race results are not coming immediately. It's just like, dude, there can only be one winner. There can only be 3 people on the podium. There can only be one pole position. When you're talking about a race field of 20 drivers, I mean, dude, the math is stacked against you no matter who you are. Yeah. And the idea that it's just like, well, we're not winning, so we need to clean house. It's like, dude, no, just take the time, continue to work on it. And I know they've got, and that's the thing, I know they've got a lot of money invested in whatever and stuff, but it's like, dude, this is the nature of racing. Okay, somebody's going to lose money. Most people are going to. Like, it's just the nature of the thing. Unless you switch to a spec race series where you're just doing the administration, you're brokering the deal with the engine supplier, and you're dealing with the setups and the race strategy generally. This is a sport that is inherently costs a lot of money. It is just the nature of it. It is what it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're saying exactly what I was getting at.
Yeah.
That when I say it's a team culture issue, culture and like just the vibe around any given organization starts at the top, and that's what I'm saying. The problem is they're cleaning house, but they're cleaning house the wrong way. They need to clean house themselves is what I'm trying to get at, right? That there's this large cultural organizational inertia that they have that they cannot just get over because they themselves are in their own way and they are not willing to wait for the results, just like you're saying, right? A 100 race plan to get back to the path to success. That sounds reasonable to me, right? That's a few seasons. That's 4 to 5 seasons, right?
Yeah.
And I would expect it to be 4 to 5 years before a team really is able to start knocking on the door of greatness there, right? And I think Otmar Safnauer might have been the dude to do it. But now we'll never know. And that plan that he had is all scrapped, and it's gone because of the impatience that the senior leadership at that organization has clearly showcased, right? It was the same thing with Cyril Abiteboul, right? Before they canned him, right? He had a super long plan, too, to return to greatness, right? There were probably some missteps in there, right? I think Danny Rick was part of that plan, right? He was going to help propel and thrust that to kind of push the team to that level that they needed to be at. But he quit, and then Cyril was kind of left spinning his wheels because he didn't have a lead driver who can help him achieve that dream,
right?
Et cetera, et cetera. But like the common thread here is that they're not patient, right?
Right.
And I'm sure that this was the same conversation they had with Alan Prost, right? Where Alan was like, look, it takes time. You have to give people time to get where they need to be, right?
Yeah.
And then when they don't, it's funny because they don't want to wait on like the success and the results and like the high podium finishes and everything. But they'll let a contract with Alonso and Piastri just kind of sit in the back corner and grow cobwebs. Like, you know what I mean? It's like you guys are being impatient about the wrong thing.
Right.
Get it fixed.
Well, and if you think about Racing Point too, now Aston Martin, I mean, what they've run, how many seasons is Aston Martin now? Is it two seasons? Or
yes, this is the second season.
This is their third season.
The third season. You're right. Yeah. Yes.
And then how many were they as Racing Point?
I think
two.
It was one.
Like two. No, it was 2 seasons at least. Because remember there was Racing Point. Racing Point took over halfway through the season over.
So yeah, kind of like 2 then. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like 2-ish, right? Because then the next season was like the pink Mercedes. So those, I mean, that's why I think when they had success early this year, I think they're on the cusp of really being up at the top.
Yes.
And I think it's proving that math works out. If you stick with a plan and you go along with it. I mean, Vettel retiring, sure, that was a mix up, but they got an equally talented person into that car again. And I think that was, honestly, say what you will about Alpine letting Alonso go. I think Alonso made the right choice.
Oh, for him? Yeah, absolutely.
Even though they're sort of having difficulties now, he still finished 4th this race. So, like, he was doing good. Like, they were, that was a solid, except for Stroll, that was a solid, like, sort of result for them. I'm sorry. I'm just going to keep saying it. I know people, if they think everything I've seen Stroll say, he does not sound like a normal human person. Like, they were asking him about like going to Belgium, and he's just like, yeah, so it's should be fun. Don't spend too much time there, but looking forward to those waffles. And I was like, are you a robot? Was that your robot automatic? Was to just talk about waffles because it's Belgium? Are you kidding me? Like, and maybe it's because he's the son of a billionaire, and maybe there's just like this. He's just a weird rich kid that's like never had to socialize until this, like he got into the racing motorsport scene. Who knows? But like, I think like if you want to talk about cleaning house, they need to drop Stroll. Stroll needs to move on. Send him to endurance racing for Aston Martin. Let him compete for maybe Stroll will end up going to Formula E because apparently Aston Martin is looking into fielding a car in Formula E. I mean, hey, there you go. Try it.
And that's Gabe's recommendation soapbox. Try it.
So before we kind of wrap up everything, There's two things I wanted to get your take on
Yeah.
because there's stuff that's happening. I'll go with the first one because it's sort of related to the race. It's just an interesting factual data. This comes from the Formula Data Analysis page.
Yes.
So
Excellent page.
the pass that Max did on Lewis Hamilton down the Kemmel Straight was 34 kilometers an hour speed difference, and that was also taking into account that Lewis Hamilton's car was running less wing than the Red Bull was, so it should have been faster in the straight. Like it was like geared towards being a straight line speed, and yet Max still passed with 34 extra kilometers of speed.
That's insane.
That's like, you see the footage, it's like Hamilton standing still.
Yeah.
Like, but hey, those arrow restriction really severely hurt them so bad. It's just so bad, you guys. I just like how the one and one are not equaling two here, and it's like I'm hoping, and this leads into my next point. Okay, the next thing I was going to talk about. There's news that's been kind of bubbling up about the FIA conducting an audit of the race team's finances from last year. There's a lot of speculation claiming that Red Bull violated their cost cap again.
Oh, man.
And that Mercedes had, although the FIA claimed that those are unfounded, but the FIA has 10 people working full time on this right now, currently, and they're already more than halfway through the process. They're pretty far along. The pages submitted for the financial documentation for the teams are between 150 to 200 pages long.
Sure. I mean, yeah, it's going to be a long, dry read.
Right. And they have to conduct extra screenings. They have to ask for extra information. And I guess the reason why the rumors were coming around about Red Bull and Mercedes is because they were asking them specifically for extra data to clarify for their audit.
Yeah. Okay.
So the FIA is supposed to come out with whatever findings they find within probably some point in the middle of the summer break. They'll probably come out with it. Part of me is like, if Red Bull is found to have breached the cost cap again by some egregious amount, I'm just gonna say my whole claim that they were cheating at the beginning of the year is gonna be vilified. I will be exonerated of all the haters because I will have predicted this correctly, and it will make me feel very good.
but now the thing is, what's hard about this is how do you trace? Let's assume this is true. All right, this is Gabe's conspiracy corner. So the thing is, if this is true, how do you even track down where the money went? Right? That's what's so tough about something like this, and that's why it is very important. If someone goes over the cost cap, you whack them. Because you don't know what that money was used on.
Right.
And you have to set an example. The FIA had a chance to do it last season, and they gave Red Bull a slap on the wrist, right? So if I'm Red Bull, I'm going to do it again, right?
Yeah, they're going to blame
any other team. I would do it too.
They're just, imagine if Red Bull the next season, they make their catering more extravagant. And then when it happens again, they're just like, well, it was catering again. Yeah. We have a lot of dietary restrictions. Max needs to drink his coconut water. That's more expensive.
Hey, coconut water. Ace. So I'm with my boy Max on that.
Sure. Yeah, but I'm curious to see how it comes out. I mean, they need to obviously do these kind of audits and things of that nature, and it is definitely not as sexy as having some secret, special device hidden in the car that gives them an advantage. But, I'd like to remind everybody that this is just the nature of the sport. This is just what happens. They've been doing this for decades. There's been scandals, there's been cheating, there's been pushing the boundaries of the rules forever. There's always something. And so this isn't like some uncharted territory, but it's like you said, the FIA has to decide whether they're going to take these things seriously and punish them properly,
Right.
or if they're just going to let it slide every time, depending on
Like
what their flight of fancy is.
like what's the point of the rules, right? Like what's the point of it's kind of like the penalty with Hamilton today, right? And then 2 points on his super license after the fact.
Yeah,
That is not consistent with how you've applied that rule in other places, right?
no.
So are we now going to, like, let's say this is true that they did go over the cost cap. Are we going to be consistent about this or inconsistent about this? We'll find out.
Yeah. Well, and like, it's like there's always that issue people don't like to hear, like the boundaries thing having a, like they're going off the boundaries and they get the lap time deleted, which by the way, we didn't mention that happened to Danny Ricciardo, which is why he started as far back as he did.
Yep.
I still think that deleting the lap is a problem. I think they should just do a time added. But even still, I believe that there needs to be a line drawn on the track, literally and metaphorically, that like this is where the rules end. And if you breach past that, there are repercussions. So this just needs to happen. We can't just let it be a free for all. Like it would be. I mean, what is that? You know what I mean? Like it's But yeah, anyway, that was Belgium. I think
waffles,
and they're just really excited about their waffles. He mentioned waffles twice. He also did the same thing. Oh no, he's talked about Canada. He talked about having maple syrup. I mean, what's he gonna do when they go to Japan? I'm really looking forward to the sushi. Let's give the most generic. It's like, we go into Texas. What are you excited for? Well, I don't go to Texas all the time, but I'm really excited for the burgers and hot dogs.
And the barbecue.
And the barbecue. Yeah, yippee-ki-yay. Like, just generic response. Here's Lance Stroll giving a generic response to a question about food. But yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything else you'd like to add, Idris, about Spa? I'm excited to see what happens after the summer break. We got 3 weeks off.
Oh yeah.
And do you want to? Should we kind of give people a little bit of a hint at some of the kind of episodes that we may or may not be doing coming up?
Oh no. It's gonna be a surprise. No? We've got some really, really good episodes.
Well, we gotta do some promo for it eventually.
Yeah. Well, there'll be some promo. I mean, if you want to, I'll let you are the
No, I'm not gonna. I won't. But well, suffice it to say, we have a couple of pretty special episodes coming up over the summer break. I would say that we have 3 weeks, right?
Yep.
So if we get some silly season, usually tends to do some wacky stuff here. If I would be willing to bet if there's some really wacky, if we have a really wacky silly season, which we might, with Helmut Marko just like deciding on a whim he's going to replace drivers, we'll probably one of these weekends we'll probably have a little bit of a news segment. But there's 2 episodes we're definitely going to do that I'm feeling very excited for, and we're hoping that you will too. We also are. Well, they're going to coincide with a possible rebranding.
Yes.
Of our stuff. We are.
Oh no, not possible. It's for sure happening.
Oh, okay. It's for sure going to happen. We're looking to be more fun and more professional, which to some people might seem crazy, because we are the most fun and the most professional.
Yeah.
As you all know. Thank you. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm really stoked.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just know that you got some good content coming this summer.
Look out for some polls, for some questions.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yes. Because I want to know from the people, what they think of us and what we should be doing and what things that we should incorporate. Because I've got questions for y'all, and I really, really hope that you answer them and pay attention. So,
one thing I would like to say is I'm happy to see Leclerc get a podium. That was cool. There was no Mamma Mia Scuderia today because one of them got in, so that was nice.
I was thinking we could change the music to when the moon hits the rise like a big
when they do something nice,
and then just have like Leclerc like, oh yes, oh my god, like celebrating.
Yep,
it'll be like the new Mamma Mia Scuderia. Well, we'll just call that Forza Ferrari or something, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I was really glad to see. Good job for Charles. It was the third, but he'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
And
After this season,
oh yeah, after the seasons they've been having, you know, I'm yeah, poor Carlos got punted out, but Leclerc brought it home a little bit for the Scuderia there. That was a nice boost. So I'm hoping they can bring that momentum into the next season, the spring break or summer break, and yeah, make some stuff happen.
And refresh and come back swinging.
Right. Well, everybody, thanks for listening to F1 or F Off. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. If you want to hit us up, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and, well, X.
Now, yeah, I was going to say,
I
think it's,
even though the button still says tweet.
Yep.
But you can find us on all of those as F1 or F Off. You can also email us at f1 or foffpodcast@gmail.com. Please give us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Really helps us out a lot. If you send some reviews out there, we will read some on air.
Yes.
And just get some feedback and just let everybody know how things are going. So please share it to your friends, share it to your family. And yeah, have a good summer break. Have a good bussin' summer break. No cap, for real.
I cannot wait to see silly season. It's gonna be good.
It's gonna be lit, on fleek, as they say.
Ooh. All right, yeah. Wow, we're sounding real boomer now.